if you're with the media, if you could independently push mute on your phone or on your device, we would really appreciate it. Whoever's complaining about not being able to hear us, we're hearing you. I'm sorry, Mr. Marcus. Mr. Marcus, if you just state your full name and spell it for us.
I'm Marcus Arbery Sr. Marcus, M-A-R-C-U-S. Last name Arbery, A-R-B-E-R-Y. Senior. S-R.
Thank you, sir. All right. On behalf of the family, the first thing that we want to say, the most important thing that we're going to say on this conference today is that it is incumbent upon the law enforcement community of Georgia to go out and arrest the men who murdered Ahmaud Arbery in a video that is now viral. What is seen depicted in that video is a crime. It's the crime of murder. The people who participated in that murder are considered accomplices to the murder. And we have heard the excuse that because the grand jury is not convened, because the Georgia Supreme Court has temporarily suspended the grand jury due to the coronavirus, that an arrest cannot be made. We do not accept that as true. In fact, we reject that as an outright lie. The district attorney, Tom Durden, can issue an arrest warrant himself directly. He can directly indict these men if he so chose to. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation can send out officers to go out and arrest these men if they have probable cause that the crime was committed. There are a number of agencies that can go out and make that arrest today. That is our demand, that the men who are murdered Ahmaud be prosecuted. We respect that there is a legal process that must be followed in order for formal indictments to take place. But for the safety of this community, for the respect of Ahmaud Arbery's memory, we demand that the least that we can ask at this moment is that these men be arrested. That, once that has been done, we are calling on the prosecutorial community to take whatever steps necessary to ensure a vigorous, thorough prosecution of these men and anyone seen to be involved in what amounts to a modern day lynching. The men who participated, from Travis McMichael, who should be arrested for the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, to Gregory McMichael, who is seen in my view as an accomplice, to Brian Williams, who is an additional accomplice. Each of these men need to be arrested and thoroughly prosecuted under the law. Mr. Crump.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. I join Attorney Merritt and the entire family of Mr. Arbery in calling for an arrest immediately. And we are very distrustful of the local prosecutors because of the history that the killers have with the law enforcement community. You know, as has been stated unequivocally, if the shoe was on the other foot, and this was Ahmaud and his father in a truck with guns chasing Mr. McMichael, Ms. Graff's son, in broad daylight, there's no question that they would have been arrested immediately. It's not fair. It's not equal justice. It is so sad that these beautiful parents will have to celebrate their son's birthday on Friday without him being on this earth, while he gets to enjoy his son. And so we know the coronavirus is a challenge, as Attorney Merritt and I grapple with how we can make sure that people don't lose focus, that his life mattered, and that because we're in this crisis, we can't let it be swept under the rug. You know, they say we have to wait to June 12th for the grand jury is impaneled. Well, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, justice delayed is justice denied. And therefore, we are calling for an immediate arrest. The same thing that would have happened to anybody else who killed a human being like this, regardless of the color of their skin. would have been arrested. They profiled, broad daylight, he has t-shirt, shorts on, and they are profiling him saying he's a burglar. That's not the costume of a burglar. The only thing they knew was that he was a young black man. And so we're calling for them to give Ahmaud the justice and the consideration and the respect that every human being deserves, because Wanda Marcus's child is equal of every other American. And so we ask you as Attorney Merritt, and I have been having people go to runwithmod.com so we can continue to allow us to be able to protest in this new era of activism during the COVID-19 virus.
At this time, we will take questions. Again, we're asking that you first direct the questions to either myself or Mr. Crump. And if we want to defer to the parents of Ahmaud Arbery, if it's appropriate to defer to them, the questions we will.
And we will take
This is Brian Crawford with the Final Call News. My question to you is, I read in your release yesterday, I believe it was, that the video was released anonymously. Could you explain or talk through how you were alerted to this video and what you proceeded to do after that?
We first received the video. I actually received it from one of Ahmaud Arbery's coaches. I have to take a moment to say that the community in Brunswick that has supported this family from the beginning has been so diligent, and they are responsible for the modicum of justice that we are beginning to see. The only reason that this case is in the light is because the family and friends of Ahmaud Arbery have fought tooth and nail to make sure that this case does not go away. And they should be accredited with any justice that the state of Georgia is forced to give. It was that community, one of Ahmaud's coaches, who found the video that had been posted anonymously online. And the video confirmed what the family has been saying from the beginning, that Ahmaud was out for a jog. Now, it is important to note, and it's critical to note, that the video directly contradicted every statement made to this family. The first thing that this family was told was that Ahmaud was actually in the course of a burglary when he was gunned down by a homeowner during the course of a burglary. That is clearly false by this video evidence, although for what it's worth, this family had been given an alternative explanation prior to the initial explanation. The alternative explanation that these men were attempting to perform a citizen's arrest is both inapposite, it doesn't apply to the facts of this case, and it's a bit absurd. These men were not performing any police function or any duty as a citizen of the state of Georgia. These men were vigilantes, they were a posse, and they were performing a lynching in the middle of the day. And the reason I say that specifically is because you cannot avail yourself of the citizen's arrest statute if you don't actually observe a crime or if you don't have crime in your immediate knowledge. These men have made reference to ongoing burglaries that there's no record of in this community. There's only one police report in that community. But they've made reference to an ongoing burglaries in this community, but some obscure, indistinct crime in the past in the community does not empower the entire community to hunt down black men.
And I would add to that, when you just think about, forget the law for a second, think about common sense. The fact that these men, Michael and Williams, they jumped in a truck with a shotgun and a .357 to go out and to confront a jogger who they saw was just jogging in broad daylight. It's not like we have the cover of night where you can't see with your own eyes. And when you think about a shotgun, that's what they use to take an elephant down who escapes from a zoo. So what was in their mind when they got in that truck with that kind of firepower to go confront this young man? It really takes us back to first year law when you talk about malice or forethought, evil intent. And so we would hope that the prosecutor will apply the same standard of law that they would apply if this were to a black father and a black son who killed a young white man.
And I know asking questions is a bit difficult with everyone, but we're working with the technology that we have in lieu of the pandemic. I will take another question.
Hi, my name is Tariq Miner. I'm with Channel 4 News here in Jacksonville. My question is for Mrs. Jones. First of all, our condolences on the loss of your son. Bridget Matter, you need to mute your mic. Mrs. Jones, I'll wait for that mic to be muted. Mrs. Jones, could you tell us a little bit about your son and how devastating this has been to you over the past few months, and how it's been, you know, before Dream News and everyone was talking about it?
I want to start by saying that Ahmad was the baby of 3 kids. He was my baby boy that I actually had on Mother's Day of 1994. He was the baby of the family. But with that being said, Ahmad was his sister and brother's keeper. He had such tremendous loyalty. I mean, Ahmad, his spirit was good. He was the most humblest young man that you can ever meet. Ahmad was very, very manable, because that's the way I raised him to be. He was the yes ma'am and no ma'am type of fellow. I mean, Ahmad didn't deserve to go out the way he went out. He did not deserve that at all.
When you first heard about this and you heard that no one was arrested, and then weeks went on and months went on, what was that like as a mother?
To be honest with you, one day felt like 10 days. And I'm just sitting here waiting, you know, when am I going to hear anything? When am I going to receive a phone call? I mean, when am I going to just get a phone call to give me a little bit of light? And the calls, they never came. And I'm just sitting here, just basically just sitting and waiting, and also praying that someone would just come by and just help us. I mean, it was really hard, and it's still hard. It's still hard.
And when you saw the video that all of America saw yesterday?
I haven't viewed the video. I don't think that I'll ever reach the mental capacity to ever watch the video. You know, I saw my son come in the world, and seeing him leave the world is not something that I want to see ever.
Next question.
We'll go next to, we're going to take the questions in this order. We'll go first with Ann Schindler from First Coast News in Jacksonville. Followed by that, we'll take a question from Bridget with Action News. And then we'll go to Michaela with WFXG Fox 54. And we'll continue from there. If you have a question, please just type your name in the comment box, and we'll go ahead and call them from that order. So Ann, if you'll unmute yourself, we'll take the question from you at this time.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Cooper, I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you were notified of what happened, what you were initially told, and when you began to, you know, have questions about the narrative that you were given originally.
Sure. I was told on the day that it happened, the article states that it happened around 1:08 p.m. I received a call via my cell phone about 6:30 p.m. that afternoon. The caller identified himself as the investigator for the Glenn County Police Department. His name was Sean Lowry. He told me he was actually at my front door. I explained to him that I wasn't available. Then he went on to share that he needed to tell me something that he didn't want to share with me over the phone. But he went on to say that Ahmad had been involved in a burglary. And in the midst of the burglary, Ahmad was confronted by the homeowner. And during that confrontation, there was a tussle over the handgun, and Ahmad was shot and killed. I didn't question that at that time, because the way that I lived is, if authority, and they came and told you anything, you didn't question that, because that was authority, and they were put in place to be trusted. So I didn't question that at all. I went on, I got with my immediate family, and we prepared to have the services for Ahmaud. Later that week, the articles start coming out where there was a conflict of interest with this DA that was local. It was passed along. But then I never forget the Friday after I left the funeral home from seeing my son for the first time after his passing. I read an article that said that Ahmaud was not actually, he wasn't shot in the home. He wasn't shot in the yard of a home. My son was actually chased and he was gunned down in the street. And from that point on, I started.
I'm sorry. That was a good stop.
Thank you. We'll now go to Brigitte with Action News Jacksonville.
Couple questions. Mr. Merritt, do you expect an arrest if they do hold to the grand jury indictment? And then for Ahmaud's mother, just give me a reaction on the protest from yesterday and just the community rallying behind your family.
I think DA Tom Durden will be able to secure an indictment from a grand jury once that presentation is made. But as far as the arrest goes, I don't think that we should need to wait until that indictment takes place. That is not the normal process, that criminals aren't arrested until they're formally indicted. Typically, arrest comes first and then an indictment. So the question we have to ask is there a police agency available now that has the authority to go arrest this man? The answer is yes. The Glenn County Police Department can go arrest them. The FBI can go arrest them. The GBI can go arrest them. There are a number of agencies that have the authority to make an arrest in this case. And I do expect that arrest to happen. In fact, I expect it to happen today.
Thank you. We'll go to Michaela Thomas with WFXG Fox 54.
I'm sorry. She also had a question for Ms. Cooper that I didn't want to miss out on. Can you repeat your question once more?
Yes, just give me your reaction on the community rallying behind you, especially yesterday with the protests in the neighborhood and just their support for your family.
And Ms. Cooper, if you don't mind, I want to kick that question over to Marcus, who I believe is in Brunswick right now. And so he may have a better handle on what's going on the ground.
Mr. Marcus, did you hear the question about whether you all think about the protesters standing up for you all?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the crowd that riding behind Ahmaud's son and all, because he was a well-known boy, and like I was well-known and respect. So, and people just ride around because they know he was a good boy. And like his mother said, he was very respectable, and she more good in him and her. And everybody know he was a good boy, and he didn't deserve to go out like that. You know, like I say, if it was me and him going and pursue Matt Michael's son and kill him, we'd have been arrested on the spot. We'd have been, if we'd have got away, we'd have had the police around our house, we're going ready to kill us. So it just, like you say, it just ain't fair, you know, it's time for equal justice. And African American ain't getting it.
Thank you.
We'll go to Michaela Thomas with WFXG Fox 54.
Yes, this question is for Mrs. Cooper. Our station is within the Waynesboro viewing area. So I wanted to know, a lot of times people think that things like this do not happen in their neighborhood. Although this happened 4 hours away from our viewing area, you guys do have ties in the Burke County, Waynesboro area. So what do you have to say to that community as to how they can continue to help shed light upon this horrible, horrible incident?
Okay. Yes, I am from the Waynesboro area. I have just as much as support here in Waynesboro that I have in Brunswick. The community where I was raised is the community where Ahmaud came and spent his summers. So a lot of the locals from my neighborhood they knew Ahmaud. Ahmaud was just here visiting my mother last year this time, and they remember Ahmaud from running. the Waynesboro community, the Burke County community, they have been there. They have stood up. And I really want to tell them thank you. You guys have been great.
Thank you. We'll now take a question from Emma Okerman with Vice News, and then following her, we'll take a question from Kate Snow with NBC Nightly News.
Hi guys, thanks for taking my question. The police report mentions that there was body camera footage of the initial interrogation. Is this something that attorneys or the family has had access to yet and been able to review?
No, that we have put in formal requests that those body camera videos be turned over. Those are critical pieces of evidence because how quickly the story continues to change over time. We know at least that whatever was said at the scene, that what was conveyed to this family was that Ahmaud was in the process of a burglary when he was killed. So we want to know if that's what they were claiming, or if there were other incriminating statements. We also find it very, very peculiar that the only witness mentioned in the police report is the former law enforcement officer, the prosecutor, investigator Gregory McMichael, to perform a homicide investigation and rely solely on one witness. Although our investigators have found other eye and ear witnesses who saw what happened in the story that they tell is starkly different than the story told by Mr. McMichael. One important respect, and I would appreciate if there was a correction in the media. Up until this point, even the New York Times reported that there were only 2 shots. But we see clearly in that video that there were 3 shots, 3 shotgun blasts, which goes towards the mindset of the shooter, that his intent was to kill Ahmaud Arbery and without any proper justification, because at the point that Ahmaud was fighting for his life, you can't claim self-defense because they impeded his path. They blocked his exits. They held guns, and at that point, he had no other choice but to fight for his life.
And I think this underscores the urgent request of us to have the federal government intervene. You need the Department of Justice to come and make sure that there is no impartiality being granted to the McMichaels and the Williams clan. The Congressional Black Caucus is going to weigh in on this matter to make sure that we have oversight, so it's not just left to the local officials. And we're desperate to make sure that the Department of Justice not accept the investigation from the local authorities as has been done with other cases. They can do an independent investigation. They have the full scope and breadth of the federal government. And so I know the Georgia congressmen there, Hank Johnson and John Lewis, they're calling for an independent investigation. And I know candidate Stacey Abrams is calling for an independent investigation that is separate from the local authorities because the family does not trust the local authorities.
And I will throw in before we move on to the next question. We are all relieved that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, as of last night, started an independent investigation. We are hopeful that that investigation will actually do a lot more than the original investigation to uncover the truth and lead to the arrest of these men.
Thank you. We'll take a question now from Kate Snow, NBC Nightly News.
Hi, thanks for having me. 2 questions for Mr. Lee or Mr. Crump. Do you believe that the DA yesterday took action and said that he would call for a grand jury because of the leak of the videotape on social media? Do you think that leak prompted what's happening now? And then for Ms. Cooper, if I may, I'm trying to understand what you now believe happened that day. You talked about being told by authority that first day what had happened. I wonder what you think now. Do you think your son was simply out for a jog?
Why don't you go first, Lee?
I think it's important to note that District Attorney Tom Durden failed to actually act yesterday. His statement that he planned to present this case to a grand jury is just what we expect in the process. That at some time in the distant future, he plans to present this case to a grand jury for criminal consideration. is not something that we celebrate. We actually demand that he takes action now to arrest these men, to directly indict these men, and not wait for the grand jury process to continue.
So do you think he only put out that statement because of the tape yesterday under pressure?
The family of Ahmaud Arbery and I met with the district attorney in a call a week ago. He let us know at that time that he planned to put out that statement yesterday. It was ahead of the video.
You know, the bigger question is, what is there to consider? You have a video, you have ocular proof of people hunting a young man while he's jogging, while he's exercising, and they have a shotgun and they have a .357. What else is there to consider? You know, Stevie Wonder can see that this was not something that is acceptable in our society, where people can profile individuals based on the color of their skin and then act on that prejudiced thought that we're going to use police power and we're going to be the police. We're not going to do the responsible thing like call the police. And since 2012 with Trayvon Martin, people have been advocating white people cannot take matters into their own hands when they see people of color living, breathing, walking, jogging, riding. They have to call the police to do their job. And so it is unacceptable that this district attorney is continuing to try to kick the can down the road.
To answer your question, I do believe that Ahmaud was just out for his daily jog. I have believed that since day one. He's been doing this for years, and he's never had any problems with any other people in my subdivision or any other subdivision that he chooses to run. And I knew that he had to be confronted to run into these type problems.
Thank you. We'll take a question now from Troy Kless from First Coast News. Followed by that, we'll take a question from Kelly Wiley from WJXT Jacksonville.
Thank you guys for your time. I do appreciate it. This question is for Mayor or Mr. Crump. Given what you said about Tom's statement yesterday, what is your confidence level in the prosecution moving forward in this case?
I have to be honest, I have no confidence in the office of Tom Durden to successfully prosecute this case. I don't think it's appropriate that it remains with him. We are requesting formally that he, at best, engage a special prosecutor after he receives an indictment. So we don't want to slow down the process by kicking the can to yet another district attorney. But the prosecutorial community in South Georgia is compromised. This is one of their own that they're prosecuting. Gregory McMichael is a friend of the prosecutor community. So it wasn't by happenstance that the original district attorney had a conflict. It wasn't by happenstance that Barnhill had a conflict. And I believe that if you look closely enough at Tom Durden in his office, you will find additional conflicts, as you will find in any prosecutorial office in South Georgia. This is more appropriately handled by a special prosecutor, preferably from the Black Bar of Georgia, or in the alternative, by the U.S. Attorney's Office, because we believe that this is a hate crime, that Ahmaud Arbery was targeted specifically because he was a Black man running in a community that was seen as a white community, that he was targeted and that he was slain based solely upon his membership in a protected class, that of the African American community. If that is the case, then it is appropriate for the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Department of Justice, to handle the case.
And that is the very question that has arisen. If the shoe was on the other foot, would this be charged as a hate crime? It's a lot of people who believe that there are two justice systems in America, one for Black America and one for white America. And we believe that that is something that has played out in the history of South Georgia. It is very profound what Mr. Aubrey said, if that was him and Ahmad in that truck, would they still be free today?
Thank you. We'll take a question now from Kelly Wiley with WJXT Jacksonville.
My question is for Ahmad's mother. Thank you so much for having us and for talking to us. I was reading the letter from District Attorney Barnhill to the Glenn County Police Department, and in it he said the victim's mother has clearly expressed she wanted him and his office off of the case. I wanted to see if you could talk about the process of advocating for his case to be properly investigated.
Once I learned that there were some relationships between the DA in Glenn County and Ware County, and I did that just by just going on the internet, looking on Facebook and finding out that these people were actually friends. And then I went and found out that his son was actually the DA there. At that time, I reached out to Barnhill's office. I never got a chance to talk to him to share my concerns. It was always his secretary. And I told her what I had learned, and I had some concerns that this was also going to be a conflict of interest. His secretary replied that she wasn't aware that his son was an assistant over in Glenn County, and she would reach out to Mr. Barnhill and she would get back with me. I didn't hear anything back from that office until I received a phone call from that same young lady stating that Mr. Barnhill is reassigning the case back to the state to be reassigned.
I'm going to chime in here. Number one, Ms. Cooper, I've said this to you before, but your diligence and your family's diligence in looking into the background of Mr. George Barnhill probably saved this case from being dismissed a long time ago. And Mr. Barnhill needs to be investigated. George Barnhill's conduct of not disclosing those conflicts is prosecutorial misconduct. It is extremely offensive to this community. On behalf of this family, myself and Mr. Crump, we are livid that he even attempted to test case with his rancid opinion about why this was justifiable. If you read through his opinion that is written like a poor defense attorney in a case that is indefensible, he offers opinions that he knew was designed to taint the prosecutorial community in South Georgia. And he successfully tainted the opinions of the public, likely tainted the grand jury as well. People who would be under his influence as somebody who is an elected official and respected in the community. His behavior is atrocious and he should be held accountable for it.
Yeah, it simply goes to what Dr. King said, justice delayed is justice denied. It's been 2.5 months since this tragedy took place. How long? How long will it take before the killers of Ahmaud Arbery are finally arrested and put behind bars?
Yes, sir. Okay, next we'll take our next question from Christina Cargay from ABC News, and then we'll take a question from Brian Crawford.
Hi, good morning. It's Correga, by the way. I just wanted to give my condolences to the, and again, applaud you both for staying on top of the prosecutors and how they have been expressing their, apparent conflict of interest. My question is, can you tell us a little bit about Ahmaud and what kind of plans he had? He was such a young man, and it seems like he was an avid athlete. Can you tell us what kind of plans he had going forward with his life?
Mr. Marcus, why don't you start that question?
He wanted to be an athlete. He just always involved in sports. He always told me, he said he wanted to box. He kept telling me them things, but that's why he always trained and stayed in shape. And I always asked him, I said, yes, you sure you want to do that, son? He always told me that's what he wanted to do. So that's why he took his body real serious, and he always worked out and ran, and everybody knows that. When he was to my house, he always ran in the hood and stuff like that. Everybody know all he did was run and work out. Because he just took a lot of pride in what he wanted to do. He was a very bright young man and know what he wanted to do in life. And I just it just hurt me so deeply that his life just been cut off so short. You know, I look at me, I say, wow, man, y'all went at my kid and took his life. Why y'all ain't come take mine? You know, I prefer y'all to come at me like that in the bottom of my church. You should have come at me like that. He had a lot to live for. He got his whole life. They ain't even give him saying, give me grandbaby, him and his mom. You know, he just cut his life off short. I done lived my life, you know, I'm finna be 57. I prefer them to come at me like that with that racial hate crime like that. It really is a racial hate crime. I don't care what people, how they see it. You know, it's a hate crime. You know, they could have handled that situation better than that. My young son wasn't doing that, but mine is on been running and working out. And that's a crime to work out and run and ain't breaking no law. Come on, time out.
Thank you so much, Mr. Marcus. Ms. Wanda, do you want to address that question about?
Maud, again, I lean toward he had ambitions. I mean, he had plans. Ahmaud was still young. He had dreams that wasn't fulfilled. And he loved life. He loved life.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you.
Next question.
We have Brian Crawford for the final call.
Yes, this question is for Mr. Merritt and Mr. Crump. Mr. Merritt, do we know how that video was obtained? First question. And second question, obviously, you know, because, you know, this is involving members of law enforcement and the district attorney's office, how concerned are you gentlemen about, you know, collusion between these parties in this particular case?
I'll start. Very concerned. Very, very concerned. I think Attorney Merritt just eloquently stated a few minutes ago about the distrust and how he believes the previous prosecutor did not act accordingly. And we have to look at those things because what happened in the past is a preview of what's likely to happen in the future. If they were doing things when they thought nobody was looking, now that they see everybody's looking, are they going to try to be even more discreet in their communications because they have this history of law enforcement culture? But where does that put Wanda and Marcus? They have no history with them as the two African-American parents. They know the Michaels family. And so this is a concern that we cannot simply take for granted. We cannot say it's not that important, because if the shoe was on the other foot, nobody would ever let these conflicts of interest go unnoticed and go unaccounted for. And so we want the same level of accountability for Ahmaud Arbery because his life mattered.
Thank you. We will take Attorney Merritt. Did you have any response?
No, I think Brother Crump professionally covered that question.
Thank you. All right, we'll take one last question from Tariq Minor from WJXT, and then we'll go to the family members for any final comments or any words they would like to say.
Yes, the questions are around prosecutorial misconduct. Yesterday, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation put out a statement saying that they are investigating to see whether the release of that video was a violation of the law. We followed up and asked the follow-up question, is it a violation for just a regular person in the community to release this video? And they said no. Do you believe, is it possible that this video was in the possession of the Glenn County Police Department the entire time? Or did it come from someone in the police agency, perhaps?
Just to be clear, this video, we already knew that it existed. We had requested it. This family has been looking for this video since before Attorney Crump and I were involved. They have requested it in writing. They have requested it over the phone. They have heard repeated reference to it. And quite frankly, the description of the video doesn't match what we actually saw. However, it's clear that at least Mr. Barnhart, who basically was serving as a defense attorney for the McMichaels, believes that this video somehow exonerates or justifies their actions. And it's clear that this video is under the control of the state. We can say that after 2 months of desperately looking for copies of this video in the community, we found some troubling things online. We found Mr. Gregor McMichael bragging that it was his son that was the shooter the day that this happened. We knew that there were early recordings circulating, but we could never